So let's put together this investment and savings relationship to understand how a couple of things might change the interest rate and the amount of desired investment and savings in an economy. So again, we're looking at this investment savings equilibrium, which is basically the same thing as what we're later going to call a goods market equilibrium, where the value of goods and services produced is equal to the value of goods and services that are demanded. And so to see that, again, this is a somewhat repeat of what you'll see in other places, is that this left-hand side is national income, value of national output of goods and services, and the right-hand side is the breakdown of different types of expenditures by on consumption goods, investment goods, government spending on goods and services. And if we simply bring the desired consumption and desired investment onto the left-hand side, we're left with investment, and that's simply savings. So when we talk about this goods market equilibrium, it's the same thing as saying that the desired savings is equal to the desired investment. So you've got, the right conjunction of those two things. So one of the things that we'll be able to see here then is that we can look at the real interest rate on the left-hand side. So the real interest rate, which we're going to call R. Now, in another video about the IS curve, we use I, but that's because we're talking about the nominal interest rate. We're holding prices fixed, so that is all the same. And broadly speaking, as the real interest rate goes up, consumer savings will increase. That's the relationship that we talked about earlier, that if interest rates go up, people will say, hey, I'm going to save more because I can be able to consume more in the future. By the same token, as interest rates go up, desired investment goes down. The desired capital stock, capital is more expensive, firms will invest less in new capital stock if the cost of borrowing goes up. All right, so let's think about a few, look at three exogenous shocks, three things that are going to change this relationship, and we'll see what happens. Now, as in all economics, when you look at some sort of shock, you first want to take a look at what curve is affected, okay? What curve is going to be affected primarily by the thing that's changed, which direction it changes, and then look at the equilibrium, okay? And then interpret that. So if we're talking about an increase in government spending, okay, we've talked about this before, when the investment decision directly by firms is not going to be affected. Now, there might be some situations where certain types of government spending would change the investment, but let's set that aside. Basically, we said that that an increase in government spending would decrease for every interest rate. You're going to have a fall in the desired savings. Now, what that means is that this IS curve, or not the savings curve, will tend to shift to the left. Interest rates will tend to be higher as a consequence of the increased government spending. And the desired investment is going to go down. Now that reflects a higher user cost of capital associated with the higher interest rate. Now, another way to talk about that, which I'll do in another video, is that the increased government spending to the extent they have to go into the bond market to borrow funds, it's going to raise the interest rate, and it's going to have an impact, very much along these same lines. So it's a different story. It's different versions of the same story. Okay, but bottom line is that the savings curve will shift back, higher interest rates with the higher government spending. Okay, how about a technological improvement? Okay, so it's probably easier just to draw this again. Oops. Other way. A technological improvement, excuse me, will tend to increase the amount of the desired capital stock, and investment will rise. Now, if you look at this relationship, the equilibrium relationship between interest rates or the investment and supply, what you'll see is indeed you've got a higher level of investment and higher interest rates. The higher interest rates will generate more savings by consumers, which provide the funds that the firms are going to need to expand their business as a consequence of the technological change. Again, so it's how the investment and savings interact that's really the important part. Okay. Okay, and now we have another thing that might happen. Which is a decrease in the tax burden on capital. That's going to lower the user cost of capital. You will tend to have investment shifting out, and higher interest rates to generate the savings required for this expansion of the capital stock that's indicated by the increased investment. One final one. It's basically the same graph, but I can just talk about it briefly. If firms believe that boom times are coming and they want to their target capital stock is higher, they're going to increase investment. That will tend to raise the interest rate in order to generate the savings to fund the expansion of the capital stock. You could have the same idea if consumers were optimistic about the advantages of buying a new home. Increase in investment in housing stock in this case, tend to have higher interest rates as a consequence in order to generate the savings to provide the funds for that expansion. So this is really another way of thinking about the IS curve that we'll talk about a little bit later. Indeed, the I and the S refer to this very relationship. We'll talk about that in a bit more detail in a later video. But it's really the essence of it is right here.